On July 18, 2023, at approximately 15:43 hours, Bedford Police received a call for assistance with a welfare check for a missing female, Breneisha Lightfoot. Bedford officers learned Breneisha's cell phone was found near East 59th Street and Chester Avenue in Cleveland earlier that day. Private security camera footage obtained by the Bedford police detectives shows Michael Royalty Nugent was in the area where the phone was located at 1902 East 59th Street in Cleveland.
All right, don't be looking at no holes in there, and if you look at some holes, bring them to Big Mama.
Hello, welcome to True Crime Seekers. If you are joining us for the first time, make sure to click on subscribe button and hit the notifications bell. We break down a new case every week. Today's story takes a few unexpected turns, and we'll walk through each part clearly. Stay with us.
July 18th, 2023. It should have been a day of celebration, a young woman's 26th birthday, filled with calls from family, messages from friends, and plans for the year ahead. But when Breneisha Lightfoot's phone went silent, her family knew something was terribly wrong. Within days, police would discover a horrifying scene inside her apartment: blood-stained walls, bullet holes, and security footage that would reveal a chilling truth about the person she trusted most. Today, we're covering the tragic case of Breneisha Lightfoot, a story about a promising life cut short, a community left devastated, and the dark reality of domestic violence that too often stays hidden until it's too late. But more than that, this is a story that carries profound lessons about love, trust, and the warning signs we must never ignore. Breneisha Lightfoot was 26 years old, living in Bedford, Ohio, just outside of Cleveland. But she wasn't just another young woman trying to make her way in the world. Breneisha was building something meaningful, something that mattered. She was an aspiring rapper who performed under the stage name Arlotta, and she had cultivated a genuine following, 24,000 people on Instagram who connected with her music and her message. Her lyrics spoke to real experiences, real struggles, and real hope. But her impact went far beyond social media and entertainment. Breneisha worked with the Wolfpack Gunshot Response Team, an organization dedicated to teaching life-saving skills to young people in communities where violence was an unfortunate reality. She spent her days showing children how to respond to gunshot wounds, knife injuries, and even bomb wounds, critical skills that could mean the difference between life and death in an emergency situation. Think about that for a moment. While most people her age were focused solely on their own careers and aspirations, Breneisha was investing her time and energy into protecting the next generation. She was teaching children how to survive in a world that could be dangerous, how to stay calm under pressure, how to save a life when seconds mattered. Friends and colleagues described her as someone with exceptional character, someone who genuinely cared about making a difference. She wasn't doing this work for recognition or praise. She was doing it because she believed in it, because she saw the value in every young life she touched. She was the kind of person who lit up a room, who made people feel seen and heard, who gave others hope when they needed it most. To her family, she was everything: a daughter who still called home regularly, a sister who showed up for family gatherings, a friend who remembered birthdays and celebrated other people's victories as if they were her own. And as her 26th birthday approached in July 2023, they were looking forward to celebrating with her, to telling her how proud they were of the woman she had become. They had no idea that July 18th would become the day that changed everything. They had no idea that the last conversations they'd had with her would truly be the last. In the days leading up to her birthday, Breneisha's family tried repeatedly to reach her. Calls went unanswered. Text messages sat unread. For a young woman who was always connected, always engaged with her family and her community, the silence was deafening and deeply concerning. This is the first lesson we can take from Breneisha's story: trust your instincts. Her family knew something was wrong. They didn't dismiss their concerns or tell themselves they were overreacting. They didn't wait another week or assume she was just busy. They acted on that feeling, that intuition that something wasn't right. When July 18th arrived and they still couldn't reach her on her own birthday, Breneisha's family made the decision to contact the Bedford Police Department. They requested a welfare check at her apartment in the Colony Club apartment complex. They hoped for a simple explanation, Maybe her phone had died. Maybe she'd been busy and forgot to call back. Maybe she'd gone out of town unexpectedly. But deep down, they feared the worst. When Bedford police officers arrived at Breneisha's apartment on July 18, 2023, what they found inside immediately transformed this from a routine welfare check into a major criminal investigation. The apartment told a story of violence, of struggle, of something terrible that had unfolded within those walls. Large amounts of dried blood stained the floors and walls. Bullet holes punctured the surfaces, silent witnesses to gunfire that had shattered the peace of that space. This was clearly a crime scene, and the implications were horrifying. But Breneisha herself was nowhere to be found. Her absence, combined with the overwhelming evidence of violence, pointed to one devastating conclusion. Something terrible had happened here, and someone had tried desperately to cover it up, to hide what they had done. Police immediately began processing the scene with the urgency it demanded. They collected evidence, documented everything, and began reviewing security footage from the apartment complex. What they discovered on that footage would become one of the most crucial pieces of evidence in the entire case. The cameras had captured a figure dragging what appeared to be a body wrapped in material down the apartment stairs. The footage was grainy, recorded in the dark, but it was clear enough. And the person on that footage was someone who should have been protecting Breneisha, loving her, celebrating her birthday with her. It was her boyfriend, Murd3red. The man she had trusted, the man she had let into her life, into her home, into her heart. The man who was supposed to be her partner had instead become her killer. As investigators processed the scene and reviewed the evidence, they also discovered that Breneisha's phone had been discarded. It was found in a yard in Cleveland, miles away from her apartment, another deliberate act to eliminate evidence and prevent anyone from tracking her movements or discovering what had happened to her. This speaks to premeditation, to consciousness of guilt, to someone who knew exactly what they had done and was trying to escape the consequences. The investigation moved rapidly. Law enforcement knew that time was critical. On July 21, 2023, just 3 days after the welfare check, Murd3red was arrested and charged with murder. During questioning, according to Judge Michelle Paris, who would later preside over the case, Murd3red admitted to police that he had fatally shot Breneisha. He confessed, not immediately perhaps, but eventually the weight of the evidence and the reality of what he had done led him to admit the truth. He had taken the life of the woman who loved him. That same day, the news that Breneisha's family had been dreading came. Her body was discovered in Cleveland's Slavic Village neighborhood near East 64th Street and Francis Avenue, miles from her home, discarded like she meant nothing, like her life had no value. The young woman who had spent her life teaching others how to survive violence, who had dedicated herself to protecting children from harm, had become its victim. The irony is almost too painful to contemplate. As detectives dug deeper into Breneisha's relationship with Murd3red, a disturbing pattern emerged, one that we see far too often in cases of domestic violence. This wasn't an isolated incident or a single moment of rage. This wasn't a one-time loss of control. Family members told police that Murd3red had been violent and abusive toward Breneisha in the past. She had been trapped in a cycle of domestic violence, and like so many victims, she may have hidden the extent of the abuse from those who loved her. Perhaps she was embarrassed. Perhaps she believed he would change. Perhaps she was afraid of what he might do if she left. Perhaps she still loved him despite everything and hoped that love would be enough to save them both. This is the heartbreaking reality of domestic abuse. It doesn't always announce itself. Victims often protect their abusers, make excuses for them, hide the bruises, both physical and emotional. And from the outside, relationships can look perfectly normal even as they're becoming increasingly dangerous. This revelation added another layer of tragedy to an already devastating case. The warning signs had been there. The violence had been escalating. Friends and family had seen glimpses of trouble, but perhaps not the full picture. And on July 18, 2023, on what should have been a day of joy and celebration, the abuse reached its fatal conclusion. Here's another crucial lesson from Breneisha's story. Abuse doesn't get better on its own. It escalates. What starts as controlling behavior becomes verbal abuse, becomes physical violence, becomes, in the worst cases, murder. The statistics are chilling. A woman is killed by a current or former partner every 11 hours in the United States. These aren't strangers attacking in dark alleys. These are people who once promised love and partnership. When Michael Murd3red appeared before Judge Michelle Paris for his initial court hearing, the severity of the charges was reflected in his bond. He was issued a $2 million bond with no 10% payment option permitted. The court recognized the danger he posed, the flight risk he represented, and the strength of the evidence against him. There would be no easy release, no posting a fraction of the bond and walking free while awaiting trial. Initially, Murd3red entered a plea of not guilty to the murder charge. This is common in the legal system. Defendants often start with a not guilty plea while their attorneys assess the evidence and explore options. But as the case progressed and the mountain of evidence continued to grow, something changed. The prosecution had an overwhelmingly strong case. They had the security footage showing him disposing of what appeared to be Breneisha's body. They had the crime scene with its blood and bullet holes. They had his own admission to police that he had shot her. They had testimony from family members about his history of abuse, establishing a pattern of violence. Any competent prosecutor would feel confident taking this case to trial. Facing the likelihood of a murder conviction and the potential for life in prison without parole, Murd3red and his legal team made a decision. In a development that some might see as a legal strategy and others might view as an inadequate acknowledgement of his actions, he agreed to plead guilty to lesser charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. By February 2024, 7 months after Breneisha's death, Michael Murd3red was convicted, not of murder, but of involuntary manslaughter, tampering with evidence, and 1 count of gross abuse of a corpse. Let's pause here and talk about what this means, because it's a source of frustration and confusion for many people who follow true crime cases. Involuntary manslaughter typically refers to an unintentional killing that results from recklessness or criminal negligence. It's a lesser charge than murder, which requires intent or premeditation. For some observers, and certainly for Breneisha's family, the reduction from murder to involuntary manslaughter may have felt like an injustice, a failure to fully acknowledge what really happened, a legal maneuver that diminished the gravity of taking a life. How can shooting someone, hiding their body, and discarding evidence be considered involuntary or unintentional? But this is the reality of our legal system. Plea deals happen because they guarantee a conviction and save the state the time and expense of a trial. They happen because prosecutors want to avoid the risk, however small, of a jury reaching an unexpected verdict. They happen because defense attorneys fight for their clients, even when those clients have done terrible things. It's not always satisfying, it doesn't always feel like justice, but it is the system we have. Nevertheless, the court handed down its sentence. Murd3red received 23 to 28.5 years in prison. He is currently serving that sentence at Lorraine Correctional Institution. He will be eligible for parole after serving 23 years, meaning if he was in his mid-20s at the time of the crime, he could potentially be released in his late 40s or early 50s, still young enough to have decades of life ahead of him. Breneisha was 26 when he killed her. She'll never see 27, never see 30, never see 50. She'll never release another song, never mentor another child, never celebrate another birthday with her family. Her story ended while his continues. The case of Breneisha Lightfoot is officially closed in the legal sense. Her killer has been convicted and sentenced. The courts have done their work and moved on to the next case. But for her family, for the young people she mentored, for the 24,000 followers who connected with her music, and for the community that loved her, the case will never truly be closed. The pain of her loss continues every single day. Breneisha was more than a victim in a true crime story. She was more than a statistic in the domestic violence epidemic. She was a daughter who called her family on birthdays and showed up for Sunday dinners. She was an artist who poured her soul into her music and used her platform to inspire others. She was a mentor who taught children skills that could save their lives, who believed in young people even when the world had given up on them. She was a woman with dreams that extended far beyond her 26 years. With plans for albums she'd never record and lives she'd never touch. Her death also highlights a stark reality that we need to continue talking about, that we cannot let fade into the background of our collective consciousness. Domestic violence doesn't always look the way we expect it to. It doesn't always announce itself with obvious bruises or public screaming matches. It happens behind closed doors, in relationships where outsiders might not see the warning signs. It happens to strong women, successful women, educated women, women who help others but can't help themselves. It escalates gradually, slowly tightening its grip like a python until suddenly, tragically, escape becomes impossible. What starts as jealousy becomes isolation. Isolation becomes control. Control becomes verbal abuse. Verbal abuse becomes physical violence. And physical violence becomes, in the worst cases, murder. So what are the lessons we can take from Breneisha's story? What can we learn that might save a life? First, trust your instincts about the people in your life. If someone you love is in a relationship that doesn't feel right, if you notice them pulling away or making excuses for their partner's behavior, speak up. Don't worry about being intrusive or judgmental. A difficult conversation is better than a funeral. Second, understand that leaving an abusive relationship is the most dangerous time. Statistics show that the risk of violence increases dramatically when a victim tries to leave. If someone you know is planning to leave an abuser, help them make a safety plan. Connect them with resources. Don't underestimate the danger. Third, if you're in an abusive relationship yourself, please know that it's not your fault and it's not your responsibility to fix your abuser. You cannot love someone into changing. You cannot be patient enough or understanding enough or supportive enough to stop the violence. The only person who can stop an abuser is the abuser themselves, and they rarely do without professional intervention and a genuine commitment to change. Fourth, believe victims when they tell you about abuse. Don't minimize it. Don't suggest they're exaggerating or being too sensitive. Don't ask what they did to provoke it. Listen, believe, and support. And finally, remember that violence is a choice. Michael Nugent made a choice to abuse Breneisha. He made a choice to escalate that abuse. He made a choice to pull the trigger. He made a choice to hide her body and try to cover up his crime. At every step, he had the option to stop, to walk away, to seek help. He chose violence instead. That was his choice, and he bears full responsibility for it. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please reach out. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, you are not alone. What you're experiencing is not normal, it's not acceptable, and it's not your fault. There is help available, and there are people who want to help you find safety. For organizations like the Wolfpack Gunshot Response Team that Breneisha worked with, please continue your vital work. The lives you save matter. The children you teach matter. And somewhere, Breneisha is proud of the legacy she left behind through your continued efforts. Rest in peace, Breneisha Lightfoot. May your memory be a blessing to all who knew you. May your story save lives by opening eyes to the realities of domestic violence. And may you finally have the peace in death that was stolen from you in life. Your community hasn't forgotten you. Your family carries you in their hearts every day. And your impact on the lives you touched will continue long after this tragedy, rippling forward through every child you taught, every person your music inspired, every life you made better simply by being in it. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you think the sentence was appropriate, or should justice have taken a different form? Have you or someone you know experienced domestic violence? And if you're comfortable sharing, what helped you recognize the warning signs? Let me know in the comments below, and please be respectful in your responses. These are real people, real families, real pain. And if this video impacted you, please consider subscribing and sharing it to keep Breneisha's memory alive and to spread awareness about the realities of domestic violence. Sometimes, a shared video reaches exactly the person who needs to see it, who needs to hear that they deserve better, that help is available, that leaving is possible. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for remembering Breneisha Lightfoot, not just as a victim, but as the remarkable woman she was.